Yeah, I said 4 months is
Yeah, so
you
that
know,
was
a decent amount of time, but then I hadn't heard from them until
Mhm.
yesterday, and they
Mhm.
asked for me to send them the buyer.
Hi, Carrie.
Hello, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can. So I'm wondering, are you just gonna do a screen share?
Yeah, is that okay?
That's awesome, because then I don't have to pull anything else up, and we are recording.
Okay.
So we'll have this, and, yeah. Okay, super duper. So you can
Good.
start whenever you want.
Okay. So I am going to talk about my buyer's presentation. I just want to give a little bit of background because I get a lot of questions about like how often I do this or which buyers I do it for or how soon in the home buying process do I do it. So I want to talk a little bit about that. So if I receive a lead, like from maybe Zillow, or maybe they're like, they called into the office, or they called the sign that was in front of a property, or I did an open house or something like that, and it's a cold lead and I've never spoken to them before. Sometimes they like, I'll always offer to do the buyer consultation first thing, like the very first meeting, but sometimes they're already like very excited about seeing houses and that's what they want. And they sometimes get put off if I'm like, no, I can't show you a house until we have this meeting. So I usually, if they're already like seeing properties, they're already going to open houses, I will set up a showing with them and take them through like 1 or 2 properties one day only so that I can meet them face to face and build rapport. And if I build rapport with them and they get to know me and they meet me, then it's usually pretty easy for me to get them to agree to sit down and have this consultation. Okay. If it's a referral that comes to me from like a family member or a relative or a past client where it's like a warm lead, and I already have some automatic rapport with them because my reputation has preceded me with, you know, the past client recommended me or whatever it is, then I find it easier to get this meeting scheduled. And a lot of times those clients are more proactive. They maybe haven't gotten a pre-approval yet. They're not seeing homes yet. They're just thinking about getting ready to buy a home in the next 3 to 6 months. And so it's a lot easier to schedule those. So those, when it's a warm lead, I try to make this consultation my very first meeting with them. And like I said, if the cold leads, I might meet with them one time prior to this. I will not show 7, 5, 100 houses without doing this meeting, because during this meeting, I find that we learn a lot about each other and about where the buyer is at in the process. And I mean, it's sometimes it can come off abrasive if you're on the phone and you're like, sure, I'll set up the showing, but you have a pre-approval, you know, so like you don't want to necessarily like put someone off in that way, but you also want to protect your time. So this is a great way for us to protect your time. So any questions about that? Okay. So when you're preparing to go to a buyer consultation, I always arrive with a folder, and I will screen share all of the contents of this folder, but I want to just kind of hold it up and show you. So the folder, we usually have like branded folders. I know KW has some at the desk that you can buy or whatever. Due to supply chain, we're just using plain black folders because that's what we were able to get right now. But our presentation is a 5-step process, and steps 1 and 2 are on the right half of the folder. Steps 3 and 4 are on the left half of the folder. And then step 5 is tucked in the middle in a manila folder, and we call this the guts. So when you leave the appointment, the client gets to keep the black folder with all the handouts. You bring home the guts, the ugly manila folder, which is the stuff that you need to keep for creating your file. Okay, does that make sense? So then I will go through steps 1 through 5 with you. And I'm going to start by telling you what they are, and you can kind of jot them down, and then we'll like dive into each one of them. But the reason that I start by telling you what they are is because that's what I do with the client. So when I sit down with the client face to face, let's say we're meeting for coffee, or maybe we're meeting on Zoom. I do these appointments on Zoom all the time. So I keep these everything that I'm going to screen share with you, I have saved on my desktop. So if you are meeting them on Zoom and you don't bring a paper folder, that's okay. You could always mail it to them. You could bring it to your next, showing where you meet them, but I do conduct these on Zoom as well. Excuse me. So the 5 things that I always do, I say to the buyer, okay, when we meet here, I want to learn about you and your situation. So that's step 1. It's a form that we call like a buyer info sheet or an intake form. You can call it whatever you want to call it. But I want to do a buyer info sheet so I can learn about you and what your goal is. Step 2 is I want to talk to you about the home buying process. Step 3 is I want to talk to you about the market so you understand the climate that you'll be shopping in. Step 4 is I want to talk to you about the true costs of buying a home, and we can talk a little bit about mortgages if that's something you'll be using. And then step 5. Oh, sure, go ahead. Step 4, I want to talk to you about the true costs of buying. And we can talk about mortgages. So you can put like mortgages in parentheses.
Thank you.
Yep. And then step 5, thank you for interrupting me, by the way. Any questions, just interrupt me. Step 5, we're going to talk about next steps. So when you arrive to an appointment and you tell the buyer, these are the things we're going to talk about, if you don't have those memorized right away, like I have them memorized now, and actually I have like a little mnemonic device, like each finger represents something in my head and it helps me remember. Like my ring is on the ring finger. That's the true cost of buying. That's number 4. Like, so it's about money, and you know what I'm saying? So you'll figure out ways to remember, but if you don't have them memorized and you want to make sure that you have them all in front of you for your appointment, just put a Post-it note on the front of your folder. And it won't show up as like don't see that as like a sign of insecurity to the buyer or that you're not prepared or something like that, because it makes the buyer feel good. If you show up and you've got a Post-it note on the front that says, I thought we should talk about 5 things today. Here's what I wrote down. And then tell them what you thought you wanted to talk about. They're going to be like, wow, she loves me. She prepared. Like, she was really thinking ahead about this appointment. I must mean a lot to her. Right. So it's going to make you seem like you were really putting them as a priority in your calendar. Okay. And after I tell them, I read through those 5 steps on the Post-it note, or I tell them the 5 things, I always ask, is there anything else you want to talk about? And then I will add it to the list, because sometimes they're like, we want to basically find out if there's something that's on their mind and write it down so that they can be fully present when you start talking to them. Because otherwise they're going to be like, okay, I'm listening, but in the back of my head, I really just want to know, is she going to talk about interest rates? Because I'm really concerned about interest rates. And so they're like trying to listen to you, but they're also distracted by what's in the back of their head that they want to talk about. So if you just get that out of the way and add it to the list, then they know we're going to remember to come back to it. It doesn't have to be cycling through their head, and they can be fully present and listen. And that's what you want, because as you know, it's hard to help buyers in this market. And so the more prepared you and them can be, the better off you'll be. So as you kind of dive into these 5 things, number 1, I will screen share with you, and we can upload these. Steph has copies of these too that we can send to you guys if you want them. Obviously, you'll want to personalize them because these are like branded with my team's info. But this is what our buyer info sheet looks like. And I would say we revamp the look of this every year or so. We use Canva to design this. It's just a 1-page, and it has like all the stuff that I want to ask people to find out more about their home search. It's basically the who, what, where, when, why, and how. So who is your people? Who's your buyer? You want to make sure you get their middle initial, their email, their phone number, you know, everything about them, so that if you go to write a contract, you already know their middle initial. You're not having to like, you know, try to text them and find out what it is or whatever. The what would be finding out the specifications of what they're looking for in a house. The where is obviously the location. The when is their timeline, and the how comes down to like the method of purchase. So are they going to be paying cash, or will they be getting a mortgage? And so you can design this however you want to, like whatever makes the most sense for you. But this is the form that we're using at this time. I will say that if it is a cooler lead, like someone that you haven't built a lot of rapport yet, sometimes giving middle initials and all of that can feel a little bit like a little bit of an invasive question. So if you feel like saving, you know, full names with middle initial till the end, maybe you start out maybe you start out in the middle here with like, what got you started on the path to home ownership? Maybe you just begin the conversation there and find out, you know, why they're looking to buy. And we have some people, you know, as we get through this whole process, we have some people who realize like, okay, we're totally not ready. So we're going to hear everything you have to say today, Carrie, but like after we've been talking this out with you, we realized like we probably have a good 8 months before we even want to talk to a lender. So, but at least let's get ourselves, you know, some footing, and let's find out a little bit more about the process so that we're prepared in 8 months when we're ready to start. And then you can always go back and just, you know, touch up anything that you might have missed 8 months from now or whatever. So, hi, I see we have somebody new coming in. You guys are like super tiny on my screen, so I can't, sorry, I can't see you very well. So any questions about the buyer info sheet? That would be like step one. Okay, and by the way, I think this is being recorded, so if anybody, you know, misses anything, we can always circle back. So step two for us would be, you know, the first, so by the way, the buyer info sheet is in the guts of the folder because it's something you're going to want to bring home with you. And you don't have to set this up the same way I do. I'm just telling you what I do because it works. And if you don't feel like reinventing the wheel, you can do this. So step two would be the home buying process. It's going to be on the left half of the folder. So the home buying process is, can you guys see this okay?
Yes.
Okay. It's literally just a flow chart of everything that's going to happen in the home buying process. If you are newer to real estate, print this off and like hang it next to your computer, because when I was doing my first like 5 to 10 transactions ever, I didn't even know what this process was. And I'm supposed to be the agent guiding other people through this process. And I didn't even know what it was. So until we like made this, we just kind of like floundered our way through from an accepted offer to the closing table. And like when the title company asked for something, we'd provide it, but we didn't always know that we weren't always being super proactive about providing things to people. So like just having this available to someone who's new in real estate is game changing on its own, but it'll be even better for your clients to kind of know what to expect. We actually have clients who will like tape this on their refrigerator and like check off each box as they move through the home buying process, just so that they know what's happening. This really helps prepare them so that they don't feel blindsided by something. I mean, I actually tell my clients, like, buying a house is one of the 5 most stressful things people do in their life. It's right up there with like the death of a parent or divorce or the birth of a child. Okay. So moving is stressful, and the more you can prepare them, there's still going to be stressors, but being blindsided makes all of those stressors worse. So what we do when we sit down and go through this is step 2. We just talk to them like, okay, what you're doing today is meeting with me. You're finding an agent. Then the next thing you might have already done it, would be finding a lender and getting your pre-approval, talking about what's that?
Question.
Yes.
Carrie, where can we find the samples that you use?
Yeah. So the ones that we have designed, Steph has a copy, and she usually puts them in like some shared drive for PC program, or she emails them out to the attendees of this meeting. So you'll get a copy of this, and like you might want to rebrand it because it's got like my branding on it. So you'll probably want to go into Canva and create your own, but you can copy everything. Like you can copy word for word what I have here. It won't bother me.
Okay.
Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, yeah. So then we tell them like, okay, once we have your pre-approval, then we're going to start looking at houses that meet your criteria. We do, we tell them like, we want to really stick to your criteria. I know that there might be a shortage of inventory right now, but we don't want you to settle. So let's hold out for the houses that actually make sense with your criteria. That's a polite way of saying, we don't want to show you houses that don't meet your criteria and then have you be like, yeah, it doesn't meet my criteria. We already knew that before we went, right? Like, so we're trying to protect our time a little bit, but we phrase it in a way that sounds like we're protecting the buyer's time as well, which we are. But obviously just like hold out for the ones that actually make sense and are actually what you're looking for. When we get to the point of writing an offer, at that time, we do a value analysis. We're going to think about our negotiation and the strategy that we're going to use to try to get you this property. I know that there have been other, opportunities for the PC program to learn about like writing competitive offers and that kind of thing. But we want to let our buyers know that that's something we're going to be thinking about. And the strategy might be a bit different for a property that's been on the market for, 2 months with no activity versus a property that just came on the market yesterday and has 5 offers on the table. So we kind of like present the idea that we're going to be working really hard to get this accepted for you. If we do get an accepted offer, we move down to this second row. I have in here that I'll introduce my buyers to my admin, Jessica. So if you reach the point where you have multiple people on your team, put their names in here underneath like whatever their role is. Or if you're part of a team, if you are, on someone's team, this is where you'd want to like make sure that you're introducing who the players are ahead of time so that when I reach an accepted offer, my clients don't feel like I just passed them off to my transaction coordinator because I introduced this concept to them ahead of time. And I told them, here's why Jessica is involved. Jessica is super organized. She's really good at spreadsheets and dates and deadlines. That is not my strength. You do not want me being the one who's in charge of your file after the accepted offer. So that's why we have her, and she's going to reach out to you at this point when we get an accepted offer. And then one of the things that Jessica is going to do is send out an email to you with all the next steps. And so we'll kind of talk through what those steps are. So the first step will be delivering your earnest money. It gets held in a trust account until closing. The next thing that we'll do is schedule anything relating to contingencies. So if there's a home inspection or a radon test or a well and septic test, your lender will order an appraisal. Those all happen right here. Then you're going to submit your formal mortgage application with your lender. And we always prep our buyers that up here in the pre-approval, your lender probably asked for, 3 or 4 documents. Down here, they're going to ask for 17 more. And so we like to prepare people, like, don't get angry. There's a reason that they're doing that, and they're supposed to do that. They're just doing their job. Sometimes people feel a bit violated when they ask for things like, I had one lender ask for a divorce decree from like 20 years ago that was like 40 pages long, and she had to go dig it up from a storage. It can get to be a lot. And so we like to prep people so that they don't feel frustrated when that happens. Then as we move into this final stretch, we get the results of anything relating to our contingencies. So we get the results of our home inspection, the results of our radon test, the results of the well and septic, and we would negotiate any possible repairs or any amendments that need to take place relating to those contingencies are down here. Then when your lender has formally approved you for your mortgage, we will deliver what's called loan commitment to the seller. And when we do that, that waives your final contingency. You no longer have any escape clauses left in the offer. So after this point, if you decided like, yeah, I don't feel like buying the house, you probably would lose your earnest money. And the offer explains that. So when we go through writing a contract, I'll describe that for you, but we want you to know, like, now this is a legally binding contract. Okay. Some first-time buyers don't realize that. So then we get to our final walkthrough. It's usually within the 3 days leading up to closing. We want to make sure that everything the seller said they were going to do has been done. So did they agree to, I don't know, repair something? We can take a look at that. We want to make sure that the condition of the property has not changed from the time we wrote the offer to the time that we're doing the final walkthrough. And then we go to the closing day. You're going to bring the remainder of your down payment minus that earnest money deposit that you already made. And then you'll bring your closing costs, you'll sign the papers, and you'll get the keys. And then we're going to ask you to leave us a review. So any questions about this one? Okay. You're all still there, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So step 3 is where we typically talk about the market. And if I'm doing this on Zoom, I will actually, let me show you what I would do if can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure that I hadn't only shared the tab, but that I shared the entire screen. Okay. So if I'm doing this appointment on Zoom, I will actually pull up the MLS like this and do this with them. It's important that if you are doing this on Zoom, I forgot to mention this before, try to tell your buyer to log on from at least an iPad size screen or larger, like a computer, because looking at this stuff on the phone can be kind of challenging. Everything that because I actually screen share this if I'm doing it on Zoom and it's hard for them to see. So if I'm meeting with someone in person, I will print these reports ahead of time. But I like to give them kind of a market overview. So there's all kinds of reports in the MLS that you can run. You can, I mean, there's just even on the home screen, I'm trying to think how to even get back to just the home screen. There's stuff in here, like reports that you can run, something. I like to give them some kind of idea of the market. So the one that I typically use, and you don't have to write this down, like you can use whatever report you want to, but the one that I typically use is this, what is this called? Sorry, it's under statistical reports, statistical summary. And you can run it for a particular municipality. So let's say we met with a buyer last night who's going to be shopping in Caledonia. And maybe you've heard that like Franklin, New Berlin, Muskego are like super hot markets. Like everybody wants to be there because they have good schools and it can be really, really competitive. But then if you run the numbers for a different municipality, it might look completely different. So we like to kind of just give this to our buyers as like a starting point. And if they're searching in a large area geographically, maybe multiple communities, you can rerun this report for whatever community you land in when you're ready to draft an offer. But this just gives them an idea. And I'll tell you why we share this. So I run the last 12 months so I'm basically running the entire MLS for the last 12 months in this municipality, single family home, or you can run it for a condo, whatever you're doing, and all statuses. And then I click next. And this just gives me some talking points. So I'm going to see if I can zoom in just a little bit for you guys. So what I'll say is like, okay, in Caledonia in the last 12 months, 454 homes have sold. And the median list price was $295. The average list price was $315. So if in step 1, you heard your buyer tell you that their max price, like what the max that they want to spend on a home is $200, you can show them that it's going to be challenging to get into this market. Not impossible. I'm sure there are homes in the 200s in this market, but it's not the average home, right? So it's going to be difficult to find something in this particular municipality. We could run the numbers for a neighboring municipality and see if there's another one that, they might be interested in, that might be a better fit. But like if I set up a search for 200 or less for Caledonia only for this buyer, they're probably not going to get any properties emailed to them. So it just gives them kind of a reality check without you having to be an asshole, because you don't want to say to them like, you can't afford to live here. That would be terrible. You'd never say that. But I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to swear on the recording. Sorry, guys. Bleep me out. I basically want them to know, like, if it doesn't fit into their price point, what else can we do to try to help you find what you're looking for? Maybe there's a neighboring municipality, but you don't want to like put them down or seem like a mean person when you're trying to explain that to them. So showing them data to support that will probably be the most effective way to share that information. The other thing that I like to share is the days on market. The homes are on market for an average of 23 days. That's low. Homes are getting an offer probably in the first week at this number, because a lot of people change them then from active into pending status when they get through like their home inspection. And then sometimes I like to share with them like what % of the list price are sellers typically getting. So if I list a house for $100,000, are that like what % of that is the seller going to get? And so in this market, they're getting 100.37% of the list price. So for a house that's listed at 100,000, they're getting 100. I don't know how to read that in whatever. Anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. They're getting 100% plus a little bit extra. They're getting over the list price on average. So that's an average home, not a brand new, beautiful granite countertop, gray, everything, LVP flooring, brand new siding, brand new roof house. Average home is getting 100%. So if we find a house that's better than average, it's probably going to go over the list price. And so this is a way for you to show them with data, because some buyers are like, I don't want to pay over the list price. I don't like this whole bidding war thing. I don't like this competitive. I don't want to overpay. And so this is a way for us to just explain to them through data, like, unless a home has been on the market for a while, we probably aren't going to be able to negotiate down from the list price, because that's a really hard conversation to have with a buyer. And so the more data we can show them, so that you don't want them to think that you're like trying to get them to overpay so that you can make a commission or something. You want to show them data that supports, like, here's what the market is actually doing. Here's why we have to be competitive. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's that one. Step 4 is back in here. That's where we talk about like the true costs of buying. So this is where I kind of break down what expenses a buyer can expect to see. And we always tell them, like, we're not sharing this with you because we have any concern about someone's ability to afford this. We're telling you so that you're not blindsided. Okay. And I'm sure you all have heard in like sales training or something that stories tend to get the message across really well. So I love to share stories about myself or about clients that help them understand why we're talking about something. So I always tell them, like, the reason we're sharing this with you is because when I bought my first house, nobody told me I would have closing costs. So I got my down payment gathered up and I was ready to go shopping, and I wrote an offer and I'm under contract. And then I find out that there's like an additional $4,000 that nobody ever told me about. The lender did not prepare me. Nobody prepared me. And all of a sudden I had to like call my dad and borrow $4,000 to cover my closing costs because I had no clue that that was a thing. So that's why we like to share this with people. If you have a seasoned buyer who's bought a lot of properties, they're going to already know about this, but you can just tell them, like, as a refresher, we just want to remind you about closing costs. But for first-time home buyers, this is very helpful information. So we've broken it into sort of 3 sections. So the initial expenses, this first section here, is all going to be due in the first 2 weeks after you would write an offer on a property. So I like to prepare people for that, because sometimes their savings is in a CD or a stock or a bank account from high school they haven't touched in 17 years and they don't even know where it is, right? So find this money, make it available, because you're going to need it right away. The other 2 boxes are things you'll pay at closing. And again, these are only if you're getting a mortgage. If you are not getting a mortgage, you won't really have closing costs and prepaids. Very, very minimal anyway. So the initial expenses in those first 2 weeks would be your earnest money, which is usually 1 to 2% of the purchase price. It can be more if we're in a competitive situation. Then if you're doing a home inspection, which we always recommend, 300 to 500. And then if you decide to do a radon test, an additional cost of 100 to 150. Then at the closing table, in addition to your down payment, you'll need to bring these other 2 boxes. So your closing costs are things like loan origination fees, underwriting fees, the credit report pull, a closing fee. We do charge a transaction management fee for our team. And we tell our buyers, we're very honest and transparent about it. We always tell them, like, our commission to serve you as your buyer's agent is paid by the seller. This is the only real estate commission that you pay, is $595. The appraisal cost, which your lender will charge, will be 400 to 500-ish. There's a fee to record your deed with the county and a title insurance policy that you'll purchase. And then we actually have decided we need to create an additional graphic to explain prepaid items. So if I teach this again, we'll share that as well. But basically, when you purchase a home, like let's say you bought a home today, you are going to live in that home. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's me walking. I'm trying it.
Oh, are you? Thanks, Zach. So if you purchased a home today, you'd be allowed to live in that home for about 40 days before making any mortgage payment, which is pretty nice. However, the lender, the bank who gives you the mortgage, they're cool with you not making a payment toward your principal for those 40 days, but they do want you to pay 40 days worth of interest. And they do want you to put 40 days worth of homeowners insurance into your escrow account so that you're not 2 months behind when the homeowners insurance comes due. They want you to put 2 to 3 months of taxes into the escrow account so that you're not behind when your taxes come due. And you'll also need to pay a full year of homeowners insurance upfront because it's billed in advance. So when you add all of those things together, that's what these prepaid items are. And we have in here estimates based on like a $250,000 purchase price. But obviously these amounts will vary depending on how much the taxes are in the municipality they're shopping in, depending on how much their homeowners insurance is. And they're the one who's going to select the policy, not us. So these are just ballpark estimates for them, but it gives them an idea of why they're having to bring extra money to closing. And if they have questions about the details of these amounts, they can talk to their lender. But this is just to prevent them from being blindsided. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions on this part? Okay. So that was our fourth step. So our fifth step is when we talk about next steps. And I always introduce the idea of the buyer agency agreement. So I do show properties to buyers without a buyer agency agreement in place, but I don't love it. And so I actually take time to explain to them how it works. So I say to them, in Wisconsin, the state law dictates that if I take you through a property, I am required to put the seller's interest before yours, unless we've already decided we're going to be working together. And I don't want to pressure you to make that decision. It feels like proposing on the first date and it's kind of an awkward conversation, but I'd rather have the conversation so that you understand what my permissions are when we go to a property. So if you feel like you want to work with us, please let us know. What we can do then is send you a document to sign. And I always have it with me. It's in the guts. I always have it in the folder, or we can DocuSign it over, but we always talk about it. And so as I go through here, here it is. So I pull out this document from my folder, customer or client. So I want you to understand the difference. So if we don't have a buyer agency agreement in place, you are my customer and I am going to be loyal to the seller's needs. I'm going to tell the seller what they need to know about your situation. My goal has to be trying to get them the best deal for their house. Whereas if you're my client and we've agreed that we're going to work together, I can put my focus on your needs and make sure that I'm trying to get you the best deal for the property. And the way that we do this is by signing the buyer agency agreement. So there's another document here, 5 reasons to sign the buyer representation agreement. Again, there is no pressure to do that. But if you should decide to do that, then it's much easier for me when we walk through a property because I've already met you. I've spent an hour on the phone with you or on Zoom with you. I've gotten to know you and I don't know that seller. So it's very awkward for me to then take you through a house and try to put them before you. It puts me in a very weird situation. If we decide to sign a buyer agency agreement, it employs me as your agent, but I am paid by the seller. And you can get into if you feel like it, at some point you can get into the details of like, what if they find a for sale by owner and that kind of thing. But basically I'm paid by the seller to represent you. So it's free representation. And it just says, if you buy a home, I'm going to be your agent. It doesn't say you have to buy a home. So if you choose not to buy, that's okay. And the agreement can be edited. I've had people who have said to me like, hey, we signed this agreement with you for the state of Wisconsin, but we've decided to buy a place way up north. If you don't serve that area, would you be willing to let us out so we can go find a different realtor? Absolutely. We can edit these documents as we need to throughout, but it's always good to have ourselves protected so that if we do go through a property, I can represent your best interest. And a lot of times people will just say to me, yeah, we know we want to work with you. Let's sign it right now. If they don't, they're usually like, yeah, let me talk it over. Let us think about it. But we feel really great about you and we'll let you know. And then I just say to them like, okay, as soon as you know, tell me and we'll send it over for you to DocuSign. And so I typically have these signed within the first 2 to 3 showings with a client. Not every realtor feels that that's a priority. I do, because if I'm taking like we provide some really high level service to our clients. And if we feel like there's any possibility of them being like, yeah, we're going to go work with a different realtor instead, we don't want to invest as much time and effort. So that maybe sounds bad, but it protects everybody's time and protects people from getting their feelings hurt. And I'm sure you've all heard stories of people who, like, a buyer went and worked with somebody else after they'd been helping them for a very long time. And so we just try to avoid that if we can. So I think that's actually everything. And then obviously I would go back, I would take the guts with me. I would go home, I would set up their search in the MLS, start sending them emails of properties that make sense. And as soon as they give us the green light about the buyer agency agreement, we would DocuSign that over, or if we see them in person, for a showing, we would get that signed right away. So what questions do people have? I feel like I usually get questions about, like, do people object to signing with you? And because I presented in this really low pressure way of, like, let us know when you feel ready, but here's why it's important. People don't typically give me a hard time about it. And I don't usually get objections to like the buyer agency fee that we charge, or the transaction management fee that we charge. We're very transparent about it. It's in our buyer agency agreement as well. So,
Carrie, do you usually extend this time period for a year on the buyer's agreement?
I typically do 6 months, but honestly, I ask them, like, if they're sitting face to face with me and they're ready to fill it out, we fill it out together. So I go through each line and I'm like, okay, so you're buying in Wisconsin. I put any purchase price. I asked them, like, are there any properties you've seen with a different agent that you don't want to be a part of this agreement? No. Okay. And then we just move through it. And I say, like, okay, next is, like, the term. So how long do we want this agreement? How long do you think it's going to take you to find a home? And they'll say to me, oh, I think it's going to take us like a year. We're not quite ready, but we're going to meet with the lender next week. We don't know how long it's going to take. So we'll do a year. Sometimes they say my minimum is like 6 months, but I can't, like, if they come up with more than that, great.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. It feels really weird doing this on Zoom, and I'm sorry that I'm not there in person, but I hope that this is helpful. And are there any other questions?
I have a question. What if, and I'll just be transparent, this is my situation, and
Yeah.
I'm newer, so I'm kind of scared now, because the clients that I have, they want to, I was gonna start my buyer's agency at 6 months as well, but now they need 3 months, and I'm like, I'm newer. 3 months, I'm thinking of closing time and all of that as well. Like, what questions do I need to ask them? Because I also don't want to lose them by sounding like, no, we can't do 3 months, because really, what if we can? I just did one in a month, but that was like, I don't think that that's normal. It was like just a good one, but I don't know, kind of back to me, I don't know what to tell them.
Yeah. There's a reason that on the state form it's blank, because you can really do whatever you want to. So, I mean, if you feel comfortable doing 3 months, do 3 months. If, like, 6 months is usually my minimum, I said, but, like, if someone says to me, like, we only want to do 3 because, and they have a decent reason as to why, okay. Like, is it because they want to shop around for other realtors, or is it because they're just unsure about the home buying process and they need time? If it makes sense to you and you want to do 3 months, do 3 months. I mean, even if you have to extend it, you just watch that timeline, and we extend them all the time. We have people who, like, we have, for instance, a client who's actively looking at homes. Theirs is going to expire in about 2 weeks. And so the next time we go to see property, I'll just take an amendment along with me, or I'll DocuSign it over to them, and I'll just have them extend as needed. So, I mean, if they seem pretty firm on it, you don't need to push it, as long as you feel comfortable with it.
I think, well, that's actually kind of the issue. I wanted to do 6 months, but they want to do 3 months.
Why?
Can you say why?
Said, well, they just wanted to be out of where they're at now. I don't know if their lease ends or not, but they were like really I have to have another conversation with them, and there's a lot of time in between. Every time I ask a question, I have to wait a long time before they like get back to me. But they just said that they need to be out of where they're at by July. But that was in the beginning of March, and I was fine in the beginning of March. I'm like, okay, but now we're coming up on April. And I'm like, well, we don't have a lot of time now. And there's still, it's all this time in between. Like, if you guys like talk to me when I call and get back with me, we can do it. But it's a lot of time in between, and I'm scared that what if I can't find them a house in 3 months? I
Well,
think
just
I'm
ask them,
more
what happens
scared
if you don't get a house in that time frame?
Okay, I needed
Yeah.
that question, right? What do I
Find out
say?
their motivation.
Okay.
Yeah, if they're really motivated, they will get everything that you ask done immediately. If they're
Yeah.
not, then it's not true. You can't change.
Important to,
They're either motivated or they're not. And you can
I think it's
explain the
important.
process. Sorry.
sorry, there's a delay. Sorry, Nate.
You're good.
I think it's important to talk to them about the typical timeline. So typically when you get an accepted offer, it takes like 30 to 45 days to actually get the keys in your hand, right? So if you want the keys at July 1st, let's say, you need to have a property under contract at the end of May. And in this market, it's taking people a couple tries sometimes to get a property under contract. So starting April 1st, we might need to get a little, like, if you guys still want the keys by July 1st, then I would recommend that in April, we start getting a little bit more showings under our belt and really like trying to meet more frequently and get this rolling, because I don't want to see you guys in a situation where, you know, that time from getting an accepted offer to the closing table sends you into the delay that you're not wanting, right? So make it all about their best interest. But I mean, as far as the dates on the buyer agency agreement, as long as you feel comfortable and you feel like, you know, they're not like trying to go find a different realtor or something, then, you know, do what works for you. But like the more important thing is to get them under contract than to worry about the buyer agency agreement. Because if you get them under contract and their buyer agency agreement expires while they're under contract, that's not a big deal. It's more about like prior to getting them under contract, what happens? Like, are you able to represent them when you go to a property, you know, that kind of stuff. With all the recording devices out there right now, I don't want someone questioning whether I was putting someone else's interest first when I should have been putting the seller's interest first. I don't even want to go there. Like, we don't even need to have a conversation about it because these are my clients. I've already signed an agency agreement with them. I'm their agent. So that's really what I worry most about.
That was helpful, thank you.
Yeah. So Steph is going to share all of the resources that I have. There will be more documents in that packet than the ones that I just talked about, because we do put some supplemental things in there as well. We always tell them, like, if you're bored and you need some light reading, you could learn more about like, what does FHA want to see? So like, if you end up with an FHA loan, here are the things we need to be mindful of when we're touring a property, or do's and don'ts during the home buying process. Like, don't go buy a car because it might mess up your loan, that kind of stuff. So we do put those things in there as well, and that should be in the packet. We don't spend much time talking about it. We just tell them that it's in there, and if it applies to them, they can look at it. So if there's any other questions, also I'm available. You can email me or call me. Actually, email is a terrible way. You should text me. So Steph will hand out my information as well.
Thanks, Carrie.
Yeah, is Steph still there?
No.
No.
Okay. I always finish in about, 40 minutes when I do this, and I think she's got a lot more time earmarked. So I'll just let you guys do your thing.
Oh.
And-
What's working with buyers right now, Carrie?
What?
That's what I want to know.
Tell us what's working to get buyers under contract right now.
Well, honestly, in the market that we're helping most of our buyers, it's not quite as competitive as what some of you are seeing. So, I mean,
Down to
Burlington.
Burlington is what you're saying?
yeah, there was a time when that was an issue. But right now it's calmed a bit. There's still multiple offers, but we kind of just try to tell our buyers to pull out all the stops, like, you know, waiving appraisals or doing an appraisal gap, like a guarantee, maybe doing an inspection, but making it that we won't object to anything below a certain amount, or we cover the first X number of dollars of repair or whatever, like modifying those contingencies. Just getting creative so that our buyers still feel like they're getting to do an inspection, but that the sellers don't think we're going to nickel and dime them. We of all the transactions that we have right now, I would say only like 1 or 2 even has an inspection in it. So
Yeah.
with people waiving,
Those are inspections.
they bring like their handy uncle with them to like look at it at the showing or something, and then they feel more comfortable. On our listings, we have always been doing a pre-listing inspection, and we just provide that in the MLS, and then that helps buyers feel more comfortable waiving because they can see a report. So that's been really helpful. Yeah, that's all I got. Getting creative. We did have a buyer who the listing agent was worried about the appraisal. So if we bid the price of the house up too high, they were worried it wasn't going to appraise. So we said, how about we just pay the seller's closing cost, like some of the seller's closing costs, instead of increasing the price by 15K. Let's say we cover 15K of the seller's closing costs. So that meant some realtor commissions. But that way the seller got that money in their pocket and the house did not have to appraise over the list price, which was kind of cool. So getting creative. Well, thank you guys. Let me know, like I said, Steph will share all these resources. Let me know if you have any questions.
Thanks, Gary.
Okay. Great. I'm gonna hop off. Okay.
Okay.
Peace out.
Bye, guys.
Yeah, I did like 5 minutes ago.
Oh, you
She
did?
said she was
Okay.
going to get